So what do we know about meditation today? I like to use the analogy, and I'll just talk about this for a few minutes and then we'll hear from my friends, Rena and Risa. I like to use the analogy of an ocean. You're on a little boat and you're in the middle of the ocean. And all of a sudden you get these giant 30, 40, 50 foot high waves. And you could think, oh my gosh, the whole ocean is in upheaval. Whole ocean is a bit of an exaggeration, because when we do a cross section of the ocean, we realize the ocean by its nature may be 30 turbulent on the surface, 30, 40 foot waves, but the ocean is miles deep. And the nature of the depth of the ocean is pretty darn silent. Active on the surface, silent at its depth. That's the ocean. Same with the mind, by analogy. Surface of our mind is the active, agitated thinking mind. Got to do this. Some people call it the monkey mind. I like to call it the gotta mind. I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to call him and I got to call her and I got to make a list and I got to find the list and I got to make a new list. Anybody? Got to get to sleep, got to get up, got to get going. Anybody? Not. So it's a natural human desire for every one of us to say, I'd like some inner calm. I'd like some inner clarity. I'd like some inner focus. I'd like some inner happiness. I'd like some inner connectedness. And the operative word there is inner. And the question is there such a thing as an inner? And if so, how do we get there? And enter the realm of meditation for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. And in ancient times, meditation was associated with a powerful mind, a creative mind, a compassionate mind, a blissful mind, an intuitive mind, an enlightened mind. Meditation today is a little more confused, a little more complicated. There's never been more of a need to meditate. There's also never been more opportunities to do some form of meditation, apps and mindfulness and transcendental meditation and headspace. And there's also never been a greater misunderstanding about what meditation actually is. So I'm going to take a couple minutes here and just give you a little mini masterclass, because I want you to leave here, if anything, I want you to leave here with an ability to navigate when you hear someone says, oh, I meditate, or you should meditate, or someone says, Bob, you should meditate. You say, oh, I tried meditation. I couldn't do it. I couldn't clear my mind of thoughts. I can't do it. Well, there's not one meditation. Turns out from brain science, there's 3 basic types of meditation. And it's really important that we all understand that, so we can understand what may be relevant for my own life, your own life. And how do we know there's 3 types? Because of brain research. Because every discrete experience you have in your life, you listen to classical music, it has one effect on your brain. You listen to heavy metal music, another effect on your brain. If you watch a romantic comedy, one effect on your brain. You watch a horror film, another effect. Same with meditation. Different meditations, different influences on the brain. So quickly, take all the meditations out there, all of them, innumerable guided meditations and all that. And the researchers hooked people up to EEG machines and brain scans. They found out there's 3 basic approaches. So when we're done with this, one thing that you'll know from this session is about the 3 basic approaches. The first approach is called focused attention meditation. And this is your classic type of meditation, not easy to do. The idea here, the principle behind it is, using the analogy, if you want to have a calm ocean, what's a disruptor of a calm ocean? Waves. Stop the waves, have a calm ocean. If you want to have a calm mind, what's a disruptor of a calm mind? Thoughts. So stop or minimize thoughts. So focused attention is a technique where we attempt to clear the mind of thoughts, or put more space between our thoughts, and we concentrate on our breath, or a point in the body, or on an idea. We focus the mind. When we do that, it creates something called gamma brain waves. 20 to 50 cycles per second, that's when the brain is working very hard. Second approach to meditation. I'm sure many of you have practiced mindfulness approaches to meditation. Mindfulness is under a category which is called open monitoring. Open monitoring has a different approach than focused attention. Open monitoring says thoughts are not necessarily the disruptor of calm, but the content of thoughts can be the disruptor of calm. I hope this is all interesting to you. I find it interesting. That's why I'm just going off. I just want to sort of clarify some things so we write cutting edge understanding. So open monitoring says thoughts are not the disruptor of calm, but the content of thoughts can be the disruptor of calm. So if you have a thought about a guy named Joe and you don't know anybody named Joe, But if you have a thought about a guy named Joe, and 5 years ago, you had a run-in with Joe, when you think about Joe. So what open monitoring does is it teaches me to dispassionately observe my thoughts, my moods, my feelings, my behavior. Mindful, be in the present. Don't be 5 or 10 years ago when Joe done me wrong. Be now, be present, mindfully here. When I do that, it creates something called theta brain waves. Theta brain waves are 4 to 8 cycles per second. Pre-onset dream, but also when a person is sitting quietly, thinking deeply. Remember in the old days, you could go into a library and you could see someone sitting over on the corner and there was like a silence around them. They were thinking deeply about something. You didn't want to disturb their thought. Somebody over there in the other corner, just, daydreaming or whatever. Different feeling. So that's theta brain waves. Now these two approaches, focused attention and open monitoring, are called cognitive approaches to meditation. Cognitive approach means pertaining to your thoughts, your moods, your feelings, your actions, pertaining to the waves, adjusting the waves, a different attitude towards the waves, suppressing the waves, more space between the waves. There's a third approach. And that third approach, according to science, is called self-transcending. And self-transcending includes transcendental meditation, or TM. And self-transcending is very interesting. It says, just like an ocean has a vertical dimension, it's not just the waves, there's a vertical dimension to our mind. We know this. We feel things deeply. We're not just thoughts. We hurt deeply. We love deeply. We have an intuition. I come up with an idea for Marlene, and it sounds like great. 3 different reasons why she should move to Oakland, California, from where she's living. Makes perfectly good sense here, or Berkeley. But then Marlene, when I leave the room, on an intuition level, quiet level, goes, I don't think so, Bob. Right? There's that feeling level. Well, in self-transcending, we hypothesize something. You don't have to believe in it, but we hypothesize that deep within every human being, every one of us, there's a level right now where our mind is already completely settled and peaceful and expanded and wide awake and powerful, said to be the source of our creativity, my happiness, myself, universal one, whatever term we want to say, doesn't matter, but it's there. We've lost access to it. And in self-transcending, we learn a simple technique that gives effortless access to that settled, quiet state, my own inner self. And when I have that experience, and Raisa and Rena, get ready, you're going to speak in a few minutes. When I have that experience of this quiet, settled, peaceful, relaxed experience, effortlessly gained, at no strain, effortlessly gained. A 10-year-old child with ADD can do this. Anybody can do it. Then there's a complete transformation in the way my constellation of changes. According to research at Harvard Medical School, my body gains a state of rest deeper than the deepest part of deep sleep in just 20 minutes. That was published in Science and Scientific American. You've heard of cortisol? Cortisol is a stress hormone. Too much cortisol, deadly toxic. You get a good night's sleep, cortisol levels drop 5 or 10%. 20 minutes of self-transcending, they drop 30 to 40%. Published research. There's another neurotransmitter called serotonin, which is the so-called happiness neurotransmitter. When you're done with transcending, you feel really good inside. Well, there's been an increase in serotonin, and it stays up. And lastly, there's a complete change in the electrical activity in the brain towards alpha 1. Alpha 1 is at 8 to 10 cycles per second, restful alert. Now, why do I tell you all of this? First of all, this is not to say one is better than the other of those three. That's silly. Somebody says, I do this technique, I don't do that. Silly. It's a tool, they're tools in a toolbox. It's a tough world out there. There's a lot coming at us. We want to maintain our inner equanimity. We want to maintain our interconnectedness. We don't want to be victim and lost to the environment, to somebody's mood or something happening in the markets or whatever. We want to have that power inside to handle this and have the cortisol levels low and the serotonin levels high. And so we want tools that will do that. So that's why I took that time. All three of those approaches can work in harmony with each other. You don't mush them together. Different tech, you don't do a push-up while you're trying to do a pull-up. different exercises, different effects. But the beautiful thing is, and this is what I want to transition to, I helped to run, along with these two remarkable women who are about to speak, the David Lynch Foundation, a 501c3. We're now in just starting our 17th year. We have provided this meditation for free to over 1 million kids from under-resourced communities in the US and all over the world, to veterans and their families who suffer from post-traumatic stress, to women and children who are survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And now we're working with nurses and custodial staff and people on the front lines of this COVID-19 epidemic in some of the toughest hospitals in the country, public hospitals in the country, and they're suffering from PTSD themselves. So the beauty of it all of this is the most modern of ailments, trauma. It's no longer just stress. They call it trauma, secondary trauma, complex PTSD, having as a powerful antidote, the oldest of practices, accessing the silence and power that lies within. I'd like to ask Rena Boone, who I absolutely adore. Absolutely, I've known Rena for over 40 years. She is the regional director of the David Lynch Foundation in the Washington, D.C. area, and she runs an extraordinary community center called The Arc. You can Google it, capital THEARC. They have 14 nonprofit organizations from schools to boys and girls clubs to medical clinics, and she runs the meditation center where she is bringing transcendental meditation for free to grandparents and grandchildren. And our goal there in the next 5 years is to teach 10,000 citizens of Washington, D.C. to meditate for free, to completely change the city, our nation's capital, and the whole world, really. So I'd like to ask Rena to talk about what it's like to teach people to meditate in Washington through the Arc.
Thank you so much, Bob. That was a great introduction. Wow. I feel so lucky and I feel so honored to have learned the technique of transcendental meditation many, many decades ago, which led me to be where I am today in Southeast Washington, D.C., where there is high crime, poverty, high unemployment. People are stressed to the max, high homicide rate. And during this COVID-19 pandemic, the largest number of deaths, where this ARC is, Town Hall Education, Arts, and Recreation Center. We are there to serve the community. We were asked, the David Lynch Foundation, to come and be a partner with the other organizations so that we could all serve. We all have something unique to give. People are coming to us because they are stressed out. They're at their wits' end. Story after story after story of people walking through our doors and saying, this is what I prayed for. I've got to get rid of this stress. And we're talking about young people, adults, seniors, families, all having one thing in common: suffering from toxic stress. And so person after person after person comes. We share with them this evidence-based technique that Bob just took us through. I watch people walk through those doors one way, burdened, unhappy. I'll give you a story of what I'm talking about. One day a woman came and she said, I recently had 3 homicides in my family, and I have got to get rid of the stress. She learned transcendental meditation, started transcending, releasing the stress. When I saw her after Christmas, she learned toward the end of the year. When I saw her after Christmas, she came back through the doors and she had a smile on her face. And she said, I had a nice Christmas with my family. Those kinds of stories are multiplied over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter, as Bob said, what the age is. We all have a nervous system. We all have a brain. We all have stress that impedes us from being the best that we can possibly be. When you release the stress, I call it a silent transformation. When you release the stress through this silent transformation, who a person really is emerges. For many, many years, I was a school teacher, and I was able to work with students who meditate. And I saw the silent transformation occur every day, twice a day. Students coming to school not necessarily ready to learn, burdened, unhappy, no telling what had happened before they walked into the school building, sitting down, meditating, getting rid of the stress, coming out ready to learn. And at the ARC, we have 3 schools there. And we are working with our partner schools, our partner organizations, to bring quiet time, because when TM is taught in a school setting, it's called quiet time, to bring quiet time into the school environments there so that children can have a way to get the most out of their education experience. I say as a teacher that within every student, there is a hidden genius. And what is causing that genius not to be expressed fully is simply traumatic stress. You get rid of the stress, and what emerges is that hidden genius. One time I taught a young girl who was so riddled with stress, she had been bullied severely in her school. She was at the point where she would have an asthma attack just at the thought of coming back into a school environment. Her mother brought her one day. I talked to her. I asked her if she would be willing to learn to meditate, to practice TM, and she said yes. That young girl went from that condition to smiling, to emerging as who she really was. We found out that she had the most beautiful singing voice. No one even knew she could sing. She started singing at the top of her lungs, creating songs. She was freed from within, because we all know stress is a burden. It's an oppression. And when you relieve that oppression, what is left is truly the gem of who we each are as human beings.
Rena?
Yes.
That absolutely beautiful. I have one quick question that I want to ask.
Yes.
I want to ask Risa to comment, and that is, what are people open to meditation increasing? What are you finding? Are you finding that there's just like, what is your experience when you're talking about it in Southeast DC?
Yes. The people who come to the meditation center at the Ark, I would say the majority of them are walking into a situation that they were looking for. And when we talk to them about what TM is, and we distinguish and we give them the benefits and we talk about what it is and what it's not, they want to learn. And if someone is hesitant, I would say 99.9% of people who come are ready to learn. And I've also experienced there may be one member of a family who learns. And then when the other family members see the results that they're experiencing and the change in behavior, they know it's real, they know it's authentic. And then they come afterwards and learn themselves.
So Risa, it's kind of hard. Thank you very much, Rena. It's kind of, you think of, okay, an adult, they're going to meditate, but I mean, I think of myself when I was 12 years old, me to sit with my eyes closed. And I mean, I just couldn't wait for recess. I mean, I lived for running. How do you get a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old to meditate? And we're talking twice a day, every day for, in the schools. What do you say?
Well, when I'm working with students.
Oh, I have to introduce Risa.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Risa is a national program director for the David Lynch Foundation. And she's overseeing our programs in education, but also with veterans and women. And her story is wonderful. She was got a master's degree in education from NYU. And part of her master's program, she interned or she volunteered at one of our quiet time schools in Brooklyn. And two things happened called the Brooklyn Urban Garden Charter School. Two things happened. The kids fell in love with Risa, because she's so wonderful, and she taught them to meditate, and Risa fell in love with teaching. So tell us what happened with what you say to these kids.
Absolutely. Well, first, I think when people ask me what my job is, they find out that I work in schools and I'm teaching 10-year-olds how to meditate, their first question is just how? How is it possible that you can have a child sit for 10 minutes or 12 minutes completely silent? And they just can't believe it, right? I think all of us, it's hard to believe children sitting quietly, right? We imagine them, as Bobby's saying, out running, playing, speaking, engaging, right? They have so much energy and it's so pure and beautiful. How is it possible they like to sit down and meditate? And when I go into these classrooms and work with students, my first question is always, what do you want to achieve in life? What do you want to be when you grow up? And we have people saying they want to be football stars. People want to be doctors, or I even have a few that want to change the environment. They feel strong about social justice, right? They have all of these huge dreams about what they like to accomplish, right? How sweet is that also for us, right? Thinking when we were younger and all the dreams that we had. So I say, wonderful, beautiful. What gets in the way of you wanting to accomplish your goals? Then they start listing stressful things in their life, right? Oh, the community that I come from, I have a lot of siblings, or I'm not really good at math, or I find it really hard to concentrate. I don't think I can go to college. So we break down these parts of what it is that influences whether or not they can achieve their goals. So I asked, how do you deal with the stress? How do you deal with such a thing that's overwhelming and you worry about being able to become that superstar? What do you do? Well, they turn to music, or they turn to sports, or they turn to their friends, and they turn to all of these external places, people. And that's when I introduced transcendental meditation. And I said, did you ever think it was possible that you could just turn within? What if you just turn to yourself, you help decrease the level of stress that you have, And then you get to be that best version of yourself. As Rena was saying before, we use it across all of our programs because that's universal, right? We're talking about World Unity Week. That is universal. The self is universal. We all have that quietest level Bob was speaking about, right? That quiet, that silence, that inner self that's powerful. So I share with them how simple it is to practice a technique that helps you turn within so that you can bring that natural intelligence out, so that you can feel more fulfilled in every single part of your life. And they say, of course, Miss Rice, I'd love to learn. I want to feel smarter. I want to feel happier. I want to feel like I can be a doctor. I want to feel that I can play my sports or even my video games. Some of the kids love video games. So I said, what if you could concentrate on video games for 3 whole hours without being interrupted? And they love that. They're like, yes, I can win Fortnite and I will be fantastic. So just giving them that option. They want to learn. And everyone is always surprised, even the kids themselves, thinking that they can't quiet their mind. They think that they also have to sit completely still, right? Those are other forms of meditation where you have to feel a certain way, look a certain way, act a certain way. But with TM, it's a completely innocent experience, as Bob was saying, just turning within in a way that's natural in every single human being. And the students can do that, right? You might find a student who might move here or there, or sometimes they meditate with their arms over their heads or even with their legs on the desk, and that's fine, because really what matters is what's happening within, right? And that's why it's possible with kids. They love the idea of being able to feel less stressed and more in control of their lives so they can accomplish all of their goals. It's really sweet.
So thank you. And I wanted to say one thing. Actually, I want to say 2 things. I want to comment. No, actually, I want to say 1,000 things. 2 things. First of all, the strategy of the David Lynch Foundation right now, it's a 501c3, and we raise funds from foundations and philanthropists in order to be able to go into the schools so we can teach kids and teachers and parents for free. That's like a forever, it's a constant, like a treadmill, just constantly. We realized a little while ago that this epidemic of trauma and toxic stress, which is a pandemic far more, if I may say, far more devastating and all pervasive than even COVID-19. I mean, this is trauma fuels, it even fuels susceptibility to COVID-19 stress and weakening of the immune system. So this massive issue, and we treat the symptoms, whether it's substance abuse or high blood pressure or anxiety or depression or insomnia or indigestion or bipolar disorder, all these different expressions that are either caused or exacerbated by stress, that in meditation, we have an antidote. And we are now working with Veterans Administration, VA hospitals, and medical schools and research centers to looking at TM as if it were a development of a new medicine. And just like a medicine has to go through stages to get FDA approval, and when they have FDA approval, then that medicine is now made available and reimbursable by Medicare, by health insurance companies, by employee assistance programs. They never have to pay for it. It's part of their package. And so this is what we're doing. And we're very close to making this happen, a few years out of doing the large scale studies by independent researchers that will show, yes, this is more effective, as effective, if not far more effective than any medicine you can take for high blood pressure. By the way, the National Institutes of Health have given $26 million to study the benefits of this meditation on high blood pressure, which is the #1 killer in America. And so we just have to take one level more of research. So I just want to make that point that actually, and it shouldn't just be transcendental meditation, it should be integrative approaches that have proven themselves scientifically evidenced to work. We can't just think we're going to survive on this disease model of, okay, you've got high blood pressure, now you've had a heart attack, so now we're going to give you a quintuple bypass surgery for $60,000 or $70,000, bankrupting the healthcare system. We have to give people tools beforehand to prevent it. So anyway, I feel the work that Risa and Rena and others with the David Lynch Foundation, specifically with TM, it's not going to be long before we're going to see this thing reimbursable by all those different areas. And the other thing I wanted to talk about just briefly is a little bit of how this works, because Risa and Rena and I have been saying, and then if we have questions, if there's questions, we can take them after this, but just a little bit of an explanation, because how do you get from here, active, gotta mind, all that noise, got millions of things going on, I close my eyes and you try and clear your mind of thoughts and it's hard, and I listen to an app of rain or music or guided meditations, and sometimes I can do it, but sometimes, how do I get from here to this? And the key word here is effortlessly. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of something that has nothing to do with the meditation, then I'll tie it back. You're in one room in your house, and you're working on some mindless, just boring paperwork, but you got to do it. Then somehow miraculously in the other room, some of the most beautiful, extraordinary, unbelievable music you have ever heard in your life comes on. Where's your attention go? Whoa, turn that up. Or you have 2 books to read, and one book is a travesty, how it never got published. You can't read a word. It's just not written. It's just horrible. But the second book, phenomenal. Hours go by. You've had that experience. The attention being drawn to that music, the attention absorbed in the book. What is that? Given the opportunity, and this is the key to self-transcending, given the opportunity, the mind will always be drawn to something more satisfying. The mind seeks happiness, pleasure, beauty, joy, delicious, fragrant. Mind is drawn, knowledge, drawn to it. Easy to watch a great movie, impossible, torturous to watch a bad one. So here the mind is built in. So some people say the mind is a monkey and it's all over the place and you have to corral it, you have to concentrate, you have to stop it. That's one perspective. The other perspective is, given the opportunity, your mind's drawn to happiness, drawn to knowledge, something more satisfying. Well, ordinarily our mind, that desire for happiness gets pulled out through the windows of the senses. Oh, that job is going to make me happy. That relationship is going to make me happy. That movie is going to make, that concert, whatever, getting out is going to make me happy. Yeah, for a little bit of time, but there's still something more. So looking out, we just hypothesized that deep within every human being is a transcendent level of the mind. Transcendent, you look up in the definition of the dictionary, beyond ordinary human limitations, like the ocean, waves, depth, silence, unbounded, my own inner self. Nothing flashy, just my own nice place, nice experience. All we learn to do in transcendental meditation is learn how to give the attention of the mind in inward direction instead of outward. That's going to make me happy. Like teaching a child how to dive. You say, honey, just stand like this. Take the correct angle. Gravity takes over. In TM, give the attention of the mind when Risa and Rena teach people to meditate. Give the attention of the mind in inward direction. And then they give each person individually a mantra. In TM, a mantra is 1, 2, 3 syllable, very simple sound with no meaning associated with it. Nice sound. Give them a mantra and then teach them how to use it effortlessly. The easiest, effortless, gentle, it's not a meditation where you concentrate on a mantra. No, in TM, the mantra is just a facilitator. It's a catalyst. It's a vehicle for the attention to be turned within. And then what happens is, just like gravity, the attention is effortlessly drawn within. And to learn the meditation, TM is not, and I'm going to go back to you guys, we'll take questions, but I'm going to go back to Rena and Risa for check the time here. Okay, and Rena and Risa, this is not a mass meditation. This is not something that you can learn out of a book or on a tape or digital. The first day of instruction is always human being to human being, as it has been for over 5,000 years. I know we live in a digital universe. Well, if you're a parent, you know you can't really always raise your kids digitally. Sometimes it helps to have mom or dad right there with them. And the same with this. It takes about an hour a day over 4 consecutive days, and just some of that instruction for that turn the attention within, and then you've got it for the rest of your life. This is not something that you need to be guided meditations or anything. And before we go to questions, repeat, I'm not saying better or worse. I'm just informing you because a lot of people don't know what this is. And I'm so grateful to everyone, all the organizers of this amazing week, to allow us to come and talk. So are there any questions? Otherwise, I got a million for Rena and Risa. Are there any questions that have come in? You're muted. No questions? Okay, so I'm gonna go back to Rena for a moment. Rena, share an experience, and Risa too, share an experience of a person who came in sort of skeptical or traumatized or whatever. I have a bunch of questions, so it doesn't have to be long answers. Just that you remember something that changed someone's life. I know you gave us one, but can you share another?
Yes. Recently, before COVID, I taught a woman who is a psychologist, and she came in and she said, I had a really rough year, and I think I'm experiencing PTSD. And she learned how to meditate. She meditated for the first time on that first day, one-on-one instruction. She came back the next day and she said to me, I have to admit something to you. I was so skeptical. I didn't think this was going to work. And I'm even asking myself now, is this real? Am I really experiencing this? And I told her, I said, why don't you just doubt the doubt? What is your experience? And she said, I feel so much better.
Beautiful. Risa, anything?
Absolutely. I'm thinking of a veteran that I taught a few months ago, and it was a part of this program where a group of vets come to the VA and they go through a whole month-long training of receiving services to help deal with PTSD. So they receive cooking classes, they learn different types of yoga, they take a course called sleep hygiene, when really it just means sleep practices. And within their course, they also have the opportunity to learn transcendental meditation. And he came in incredibly skeptical, but also incredibly desperate. He ended up signing up to learn with me. And when we sat down one-on-one before the course, he had shared that he was desperate for something that could help him sleep. He had tried many other forms of meditation. He had tried guided sleep meditations. He had even turned to some medication. He had turned to some illegal substances, and nothing was helping him to sleep. But he had read some of the research that we have on TM supporting veterans with sleep and other outcomes, of course. I won't go into that right now, but he was desperate and ready. He said, I'm going to try anything, and this is my last hope, so I hope you can deliver. So as you can imagine, I said, of all the times I hope this technique works, I hope it works right now. And we sat for our first instruction, and he fell asleep. We were barely in to the meditation, and he just slept, basically slept through his entire instruction. And when he finally came out of it, he just said, thank you. Right? Thank you for that opportunity to just turn within, to rest. Right? And I think this example highlights for what TM can do for people, and is giving them the opportunity to rest so that they can come out and be a part of life. Right? Bob said earlier that there's not just one solution, but what TM can support is uptake of other interventions. Right? We can't turn to drugs, or we can't turn to therapy when we are under a lot of stress. right? It's hard to see anything because you're covered by it, right? You can't perceive things as clearly. How many times do you send a horrible email or have a horrible conversation with someone just because we're under a lot of stress, right? So that's what TM is providing for veterans, for every single person, is the opportunity to eliminate some of that stress, so that when you come out, then you can perceive your life more fully and you can get some sleep. So
no, and that's beautiful. I've had that same experience teaching veterans where they haven't slept but an hour a night for months and months and months. And if that 1 hour is filled with cold sweats and nightmares, and the first week or several days, they just sleep. And then they've sort of paid off that sleep debt. And then they're sleeping more normally at night. And then their meditations are clear and calm because they got that fatigue out. I'd like to take a few minutes actually to talk, if I may, go back to research for a moment, because I do love research. I love the fact that something as abstract as the mind and consciousness and the universal one, enlivening that, can have a profound impact on the way our brain functions, on the way that our heart cardiovascular system functions. That it's not separate, it's not partitioned, it's one continuum. Spirituality, consciousness, health, it's one continuum. And so I want to talk a little bit more about what the meditation does for the brain in two different areas. One is, we're talking a lot about healing trauma. And so we've been talking about, yes, it's relaxing. And a person could say, I know it's relaxing. Well, I exercise, or I do this or that. But things that happen in the brain that don't happen at any other time, really. So there's two parts of your brain that I want to discuss. One is called the amygdala. The amygdala is there's two sides, about the size of an almond, right next to each other in the midbrain, center of your brain. And this is the part of your brain for fight or flight. It's in the limbic system. It's fight or flight. Something is coming at you, you feel threatened. And it's a lion chasing you 200,000 years ago in the savannah, or it is you're in combat, or you're under attack. So what happens is, you perceive the attack, your amygdala gets hyper aroused, sends a message like split second to the hypothalamus, says we're under attack, and then sends a message to your adrenal glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and now you're pumping out adrenaline and you're pumping out cortisol. Adrenaline is, I could lift up a car, I could do whatever, and cortisol takes all the energy from your brain, from digestion, from everything, into your muscles. So you can fight or you can run. Well, that's a marvelous thing to have happen when you're actually under attack. And when it happens and you're under attack, then when you're done, you want to settle back down. You don't want that to stay on, because you're now depleting and basically killing your body off, because all the energy, all the glucose, everything's going into your muscles. Well, the problem is, and this is where post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress is, it doesn't stop. The amygdala stays hyper aroused, keeps sending messages to the hypothalamus and to the adrenal glands, pump out, pump out, pump out. And so we're constantly in a state of hyper arousal. And what that does, in addition to killing us, it shuts down what's called the prefrontal cortex. Again, I hope this is interesting. Prefrontal cortex is the size of your fist. It's right behind your forehead. Prefrontal cortex is the CEO of your brain. That's executive functioning. It's the part of your brain that's used it's a higher brain to make decisions, judgment, planning. It's your own sense of self. When I'm really stressed, do I make good decisions? When I'm really stressed, do I have good judgment? When I'm really stressed, do I have a good sense of self? No, it's a disaster. Well, what happens when the amygdala, and it's also the rational filter against impulsive decisions. So what happens, the amygdala, they call it an amygdala hijacking, takes over the brain, shuts down this. Now I'm just in fight or flight mode, and maybe something happened to me first thing in the morning for which I needed to respond, but now I don't slow down. And I'm in that same hyper-reactive mood, and everybody who comes into my path gets blasted because my amygdala has been hijacked. So what happens in transcendental meditation? Effortlessly calms the amygdala and brings the frontal lobe back online. and restores healthy, normal functioning. We want the amygdala to alert us to a problem, but we don't want it to take over my life. So that's the one thing I wanted to say. And the other very cool thing that's just brand new, and I'm mindful of the time, because I'm going to give final word to these two amazing human beings. You know, I think of creativity. We think, oh, well, you know, David Lynch is creative, or this person is, we think of a creative, Picasso was creative, and this person, we think of some great writer. And creativity, we need creativity, problem solving, 1,000,000 times every day. We need solutions to problems in our life all the time, all the time. Impossible situations, we need to come up with a solution. Two kids are squabbling, two kids are squabbling. If I'm at my wit's end, I lose it. If I'm on top of it, I come up with a solution that makes them both happy, and mainly me, but it makes them both happy. So where does that ability to solve problems come from, that creative process? And what does it have to do with TM? So it turns out that there are two key networks to your brain involved in the creative process. The first is called the executive control center. It's at the front of your brain. And this is the part of your brain where you can focus for long periods of time to get something done. A person has a great idea for a book, a great idea to build a bridge, a great idea for a business, a great idea for whatever. Okay, you've got a great idea. Now you got to put pen to paper, keyboard to, you got to do it. And that's part of the creative process in the executive control center. That's where your brain's working very hard. So researchers wanted to know, well, what is the brain doing when it's just resting? Just not focused, not on task. What is the brain doing then? What does the brain default to? And they came up with a very creative name for what the brain defaults to. They called it, not surprisingly, the default mode network. Best they could come up with, the default mode. But that was and you know, that was a part of the brain that was still active, it turns out, but it was non-directed, non-focused. So they said, well, what is the brain doing when it's non-focused? And they were very dismissive of it at first. They said, oh, it's a daydreamy brain. That's the brain that's just sort of wandering. Now they have two new names for that part of your brain, the default mode network. The first is called the imagination network. This is the part of the brain. And by the way, the imagination network is composed of 3 subnetworks from the back of your brain, from your past, your present, your future, back, middle, front. That's where non-linear, creative, really great solutions bubble up from. Like you're in front of the computer and you're trying to figure something out and you can't do it, and you're getting frustrated and your partner says, let's go for a walk. You go for a walk or you take a hot shower. You ever had that and the solution comes? Ever have that? That's the default mode network. That's the imagination network. So I want to tell you the new name they're using for the imagination network. And you can Google this. It's not just me making it up. They call it the Genius Lounge. Is that like the greatest name?
I love that.
Brain scientists call it the Genius Lounge. Part of the brain where the really profound creative ideas come from. Now, stress shuts down both. When I'm stressed, I can't focus, fragmented, I can't focus, and stress, you've heard of writer's block, stressed out, nothing happens. Well, here's the final 2 points. They did a study on the most they identified as 200 of the most creative people in the world, architects, conductors, mathematicians, and they found something interesting. Their brains are hardwired differently than most people's. For those people, there's no barrier between the two. There's no wall between the imagination network and the focus. Because for most of us, I have the idea, shuts down, now I focus, vice versa. For these really creative people, there's a free flow of communication. And that's why you see these people who you bring creativity to a whole new level, because as you're focusing, you're innovating and focusing and innovating. It's phenomenal. The reason I tell you all of this is because when you transcend, you wake up the attention network and you wake up the default mode network, the imagination network. And because of something called neuroplasticity, and the neurons that fire together in your meditation wire together out of your meditation. And now you have new neural pathways for this completely high peak performance level of the mind. And I'd have to say that any technique, mindfulness has, and concentration meditations are phenomenal, but they suppress the default mode network because any effort suppresses that. So that's why I say different techniques for different outcomes. Okay, I went on. You have 2 minutes here, Raisa, and then Rena gets to conclude with 2 minutes. What would you like your final comments to be?
My final comments after such a beautiful talk would just be to find something that works for you. I, of course, am a strong supporter of TM as a transcendental meditation teacher, but in these times until we're more active again and we can go out to learn TM, find something for now that helps you turn within, right? Your inner self is the most powerful. So take that time.
If I ever worry about the future of the world and the leadership of the world, Raisa Martinez brings tears to my eyes. This woman's going to run the world. I'll vote for you now, and you're not even old enough. Rena, anything you'd like to, what would you like to say?
I would just like to say that my experience through, first of all, being a practitioner of transcendental meditation myself, and also watching other people who have practiced TM, no matter how they came, no matter what they were experiencing, got to have the experience that what is inside of us is more powerful than anything out here. And so by releasing that stress, that inner power, that inner genius, that inner creativity gets to shine forth. And that is a life worth living.
Well, I have nothing to comment on that other than to say, if someone is interested in finding out more information about the David Lynch Foundation and the work that Rena and Raisa are doing and would like to be involved, you can go to davidlynchfoundation.org. If you're interested in TM, you can go to tm.org. And here, I'm going to do something here, and you're going to roll your eyes. I'm going to give you my personal email if you have a question. And this is, they'll tell you, this is my email. You can email me at bob@davidlynchfoundation.org, bob@davidlynchfoundation.org. I'm so moved by the work that everyone is doing with this during this week. I want to help. So if you have a question, email me and I'll answer it. So that's all I wanted to say. I feel blessed to be able to work with Rena and Raisa. I feel blessed to be able to talk to everyone. And the truth of the matter is, there's only one universal one, and that's all of us. And when we wake up to that, we will finish this phase transition. It will be a new world. Thank you very much.